What would you do if the people you loved most turned your deepest insecurities into a public spectacle? For me, Emily Harper, that question became my reality on a night that was supposed to be a celebration. It was my family's annual reunion, a tradition steeped in laughter, shared stories, and the clinking of glasses under the glow of fairy lights. This year, we gathered at a rustic banquet hall nestled in the countryside, its wooden beams adorned with ivy and its tables laden with home-cooked dishes. I'd spent weeks planning, hoping to prove myself to a family that had always seen me as the quiet one, the dreamer who never quite measured up to their loud, ambitious standards. But as the evening unfolded, I realized I'd walked into a trap I hadn't seen coming. The hall buzzed with over 50 relatives, their voices overlapping in a familiar cacophony. My parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins filled the room, their faces lit with the kind of joy that only comes from shared history. I stood near the dessert table, adjusting a vase of wildflowers, when my older sister, Clara, raised her glass for a toast. Clara, with her sharp wit and sharper tongue, had always been the family's golden child, successful, poised, and never afraid to command attention. I smiled, expecting her usual charm, but her words cut like a knife. "Here's to Emily," she began, her voice dripping with mockery, "who's still chasing her little dreams while the rest of us live in the real world." Laughter erupted, sharp and cruel. My cheeks burned as eyes turned toward me, some amused, others pitying. My cousin Mark chimed in, recounting a failed art project I'd poured my heart into years ago, exaggerating its flaws for laughs. My mother, usually my defender, joined in, joking about my endless sketching that never paid the bills. Each word was a dagger, slicing through the confidence I'd painstakingly built. I stood frozen, the room spinning, my heart pounding as I fought back tears. I glanced at my husband, David, across the room. His jaw was tight, his eyes locked on mine with a quiet intensity that anchored me. David, with his steady hands and kind heart, had always been my safe harbor. We'd met in college, two introverts who found solace in each other's silences. He knew how much this night meant to me, how I'd agonized over every detail to earn my family's respect. But now, as their laughter echoed, I felt like a child again, small and insignificant under their gaze. The torment continued as my uncle proposed a fun game, a roast of each family member. When my turn came, the jabs grew sharper. Clara mocked my starving artist lifestyle, Mark teased my quiet nature, and even my younger cousin, barely 20, chimed in with a jab about my boring marriage. The room became a blur of faces, their laughter a wall closing in. I wanted to scream, to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. I was drowning in their words, each one stripping away the woman I'd fought to become. Then, a new voice broke through the noise, not loud, but firm. It was Aunt Lydia, the family's eccentric matriarch, who rarely attended these gatherings. She stood, her silver hair catching the light, her eyes sharp with a wisdom that silenced the room. "Enough," she said, her voice cutting through the laughter like a blade. "You mock Emily for her dreams, but what have you built with your own? Success isn't measured by bank accounts or loud voice, it's in the courage to keep going, even when the world laughs." The room fell silent, the air heavy with her words. I stared at her, stunned, as a flicker of gratitude warmed my chest. Lydia, who'd always seemed distant, had seen me in a way I hadn't expected. But the night wasn't over. As the silence lingered, the lights in the hall dimmed, casting a soft glow over the tables. A murmur rippled through the crowd, and then I saw him, David, stepping onto the small stage at the front of the room, the microphone in his hand. My heart skipped a beat. David hated public speaking. He was the man who preferred fixing things quietly, not drawing attention. Yet there he was, his broad shoulders squared, his eyes scanning the room before settling on me. "Emily," he began, his voice steady but thick with emotion, "you are the strongest person I know." The room was so quiet I could hear my own breathing. "You've spent your life creating beauty through your art, your kindness, your heart. And tonight, I'm not letting anyone dim that light." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, leather-bound sketchbook, the one I'd filled with drawings I never showed anyone, not even him. My breath caught as he opened it, holding up a sketch of a vibrant meadow, its colors leaping off the page. "This," he said, turning the page to show a natural portrait of our daughter, Lily, laughing in the sun, "is what you do. You see the world in ways the rest of us can't. You make it better." He flipped through more pages, each one a piece of my soul I'd kept hidden, afraid it wasn't enough. The crowd was silent, their earlier laughter replaced by something else, curiosity, perhaps, or shame. David's voice grew stronger. "You all mocked her tonight, but you don't know her like I do. She's not just my wife, she's my hero." Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't from pain anymore. They were from the overwhelming realization that I wasn't alone. David's words were a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge. He stepped off the stage and walked to me, handing me the sketchbook. "You don't need their approval," he whispered, his hand warm against mine. "You never did." The room erupted in applause, tentative at first, then louder. Clara's face was unreadable, but my mother's eyes were wet with tears. Aunt Lydia nodded at me, a small smile on her lips. I clutched the sketchbook, my heart full in a way it hadn't been in years. For the first time, I saw my family not as judges, but as flawed, human, and maybe just maybe capable of change. The rest of the night passed in a haze. Some relatives approached me, offering apologies or awkward compliments on my art. Clara stayed quiet, but I caught her looking at my sketchbook later, her expression softer than I'd ever seen. I didn't need her validation anymore, but the shift in her gaze felt like a small victory. As David and I drove home, the stars bright above the countryside, I realized something profound. The mockery had hurt, yes, but it had also revealed the people who truly saw me, Lydia, with her unexpected wisdom, and David, with his unwavering love. I wasn't the quiet one anymore. I was Emily, the artist, the dreamer, the woman who could stand tall even when the world tried to tear her down. The next morning, I opened my sketchbook and began to draw, not for approval, not for anyone else, but for me. Each stroke was a declaration, a reminder that my worth wasn't tied to their laughter or their praise. And as I sketched, I thought of David's voice, Lydia's courage, and the light that had dimmed but never went out. I was enough. I always had been.